All right,
Are we ready?
we're ready.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Neufeld Institute's weekly panel, Q&A panel, on parenting in a pandemic. As most of you know, the Neufeld Institute is about applying developmental science to raising children, parenting and teaching them. But how are we to do that in the middle of a pandemic when everything seems to have been changed? I'm Gordon Neufeld. Joining me to help answer your questions are two of our Neufeld Institute faculty. Dr. Deborah McNamara is author of Rest, Play, Grow, Making Sense of Preschoolers, as well as the children's book, The Sorry Plane. And she is joining us from her home in Vancouver. You see, that's a self-portrait, right, of one of your daughters?
That's right.
Yeah. And Tamara Strijack is our academic dean and the co-author of Reclaiming Our Students, Emotional Health in Schools. Did I say that right? Reclaiming Our Students, Emotional Health in Schools, yes. And she's joining us from her home near Duncan on Vancouver Island. And as I understand it, I was just told we are full to capacity with 500 registrants. And some didn't get in, but from time zones all over the world, so welcome. Before we begin with your questions, and as I understand, we have more than we'll be able to answer, but that's a good place to start. Tamara will explain how this works.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we had many questions come in, and we will try to get to as many as we can, but there's quite a few themes that are in common, so we'll be taking some of those together and looking at those questions as we go through for our hour. We will save some. If we're not able to get to them all, we can save some for next week. We'll be doing this on a weekly basis for the next little while, and the recordings of this will be posted to the website, and I'll explain a little bit more about where to find that at the end of the session, but we'll be posting those for you, minus the chat. So for those who are watching the recording now, you won't be able to view the chat, but we have a live chat function here. And the benefit of this is we actually have behind us a whole team of our faculty who are here as panelists. It shows up as panelists, and they are here to help answer questions as they come up, clarifying questions, wondering where to get more resources on a certain topic, and they will be responding to you as we go through the sessions. So we'll be bringing some of your interactions and your questions back into the panel, and some of them they will handle directly. So thank you to our wonderful team who was there in the chat. So with the chat, as I mentioned earlier, there are two options. You can send the chat to all panelists, and that will just go directly to our faculty, or you can choose to all panelists and attendees, which will go to everyone, and it will show up in the chat. So if you want to make a general comment, a discussion point, or a question that you'd like to see answered for everybody, feel free to use all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, if you want to send something directly to the panelists, you can choose that option. So hopefully that's clear. And we won't be using voice or video of anybody. This just gets too unwieldy with such a large group. So you'll just see our faces, but you'll hear the voices of our faculty in the chat. And I will talk a little bit more about, like I say, where to find the recordings afterwards, as well as a wonderful resource that we have now available. We've gathered some resources that are related to the pandemic, some editorials, some recordings that we've already, some webinars that have already happened, and as well as Gordon's live stream address that happened last week at this very time. And so those will be available on the website under our resources page. So it's exciting to have all of those in one place if you wish to share those with anybody. So I think without further ado, we should dive in and start looking at some of the questions.
Yes, I'm not sure. I mean, I was going to say I'm ready. I'm not sure, but let's have it.
Okay. Well, I think this is the first question that I'm going to pose here I think it's a very common question that people are asking. And the question is, what is okay to share with our kids? I'll just read in the background here. This person says, of course, we want to present our strongest self to our children to help them feel safe and secure during this time of uncertainty. When we are experiencing stress, fear, sadness, and all the many difficult emotions that might be bubbling up, how much of this, if any, is okay to talk about with our children or teens?
Well, that's a great question to lead with. I think so important. And it's a question that applies to all kinds of things, not just the pandemic. So all kinds of things that are alarming, for children. So there's some general guidelines. You've got to give enough so that the child can make sense of the world around them. That's absolutely necessary. If they can't make sense of it, that's even more alarming. Your own fears should have nothing to do with this. So when you find the storyline that's important to make sense of their world, it's important to not convey one's own alarm, because nothing is more scary for a child than seeing mom or dad alarmed. That is more scary than what the content is. And we are their source of safety. And we need to remember that it's not that we can give them a safe world. We can't. And we can't at this time. And that's absolutely for certain we can't at this time. We've never been able to. We've never been able to do this. But when it comes to kidnappers, when it comes to scary things, when it's these things that can happen, it's important to convey the scripts, the rules, at a time that our voice is calm, we're not showing our own alarm. They feel safe because they're near us, we are their parent, that's how they feel safe. Not, children can feel safe in the middle of a war with bombs dropping around. For instance, in the London during the war, in the what do they call it? The shelters, in the shelters, when the children were with their parents, the research shows they were less alarmed than children are today, even though they could hear the bombs dropping around them. So we are their source of alarm. We don't want to blow that. We want to be able to give them a story that can make sense of their world. And we want to be able to translate what they need to do, not into scripts, little scripts that they can do. And that's what the 6-foot rule is about. And that's how you talk to grandma. And that's how we do this, and all kinds of scripts that are doable. And the idea of that is as a script. Children are very rule oriented and they love rules to orient by, but you don't have to tell them the scary stuff behind the script. The script will do the job, and they will be more concerned about keeping the script. But those are some things to start. Deborah, I'll hand it to you. This is a huge question. So,
well, I always come back to, what does it mean to take the lead with our children? And one of the things, that I have a lot of questions about when presenting our material is this idea of hiding our needs. What does that mean to hide our needs as parents? Surely we have them. Surely we're stirred up with our own emotions. Surely we're alarmed and frustrated. Surely they're going to leak out of us. And I think this is a concern for a lot of parents, is what do I do with my own big emotions that are also stirred up through this? Where am I going to put them? How do I lead my child even though I'm full of fear? And what I come back to is the assurance that nature was not foolish in designing us as parents, and that we have these beautiful, amazing, wondrous alpha instincts that allow us to take the lead despite tremendous emotional pressure and duress that we might be under. And you'll feel yourself sliding into it, where the focus is no longer on you. And I think that's the problem, is that when the focus is on us, then I get very overwhelmed. We get very overwhelmed by our emotions. But man, oh man, if we can look at our child and say, what does this child need from me right now? They need a sense of safety. They need me to lead. They need not to share in my emotions. It doesn't mean I have to push my emotions away. It doesn't mean I don't have any emotions anymore. But it means that I have to put my focus on my child's needs, my child's emotions, and answer that from that place inside of me. And this isn't learned. This is innate. And that's what's so beautiful about it, is it's already inside of each parent to give their child. And so I find myself as a parent anchoring into that. I also find that I need my emotional valves And that's where my
Yes.
friends come in, and that's where my
Yeah.
family comes in, and that's where my husband comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also need to find a place to release those emotions inside me as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add in there too, is just recognizing that we do have those, that things are stirred up in us, and we do need to find those places that where it's not, where our own big emotions aren't alarming our children. And I think that's the key, is in finding those places. I find I have my children are older now, 18 and 21. And I find, I share a lot more with them than I would have when they were younger, in terms of just, yeah, it's so hard with so much unknown and so many things that we don't have control over. I'm normalizing that a lot more. We're asking questions together. I'm normalizing kind of the release of my emotion, and the built up energy that's there. But it's in a way because they're older, and they can handle that in a way where they're not taking responsibility for me. I am okay. I'm good with this. And this is what I need to do right now. I need to go for more walks. I need to, dance more, sing more, get some of this out, and we can do that together. But I'm not drawing attention to my own fears, even with my older children. That's not where I'm going. They need to know that I am there for them, even at 18 and 21. That this is a safe place. So, yeah.
I'd like to just one more thing before we leave that I think is really important, is to understand what children's greatest fears are is actually facing separation with the parent. That's
Mm-hmm.
what their greatest fears are. And so when you're able to have a calm demeanor, even if you have to act like it, because you're taking your alpha role with a child in terms of what they need. But if you address the basic issue, we're okay, honey, we'll be okay. I love you. If you give the affirmation about the relationship, uh, and I'm going to go to the extreme here just to serve the point. Let's say that you fear for your own life. You've got COVID and you don't know if you're going to come through it. The point is that that you will be able to serve your daughter, your son, dead or alive, because a relationship is forever. And at the end, that is what they need to rest on. Now, you're not going to tell them that. That's not something you're going to tell them. But you know that. And that's a confidence that can come from us. A deep confidence that the relationship transcends everything. Your invitation to them to exist in this world can serve them, dead or alive. And this is the bottom line, so to speak. And if you come with that confidence, that deep confidence that nothing can come between us, and you can convey that confidence in a way that doesn't alarm the child, but with that confidence, it will do much to relax them. And as I say, they could be in the middle of a war with bombs dropping down around them. As long as they are safe in that context with their family, they feel safe. And that's wonderful that it's not something we do. It's just a place. It's a sanctuary of safety we are for them. And so the issue is more, don't spoil it, just don't spoil it. That is more the issue.
Yeah. Well, we'll move to another big topic that came up, and there's a few different questions around this. And this is, what do we do with the big emotions? How do we address, and this is the big emotions in our children.
Oh, I see. I thought
what do we do with the big emotions in our children?
What? It's not about us.
What? Yeah. Emotions coming out all over the place?
When we trip all over those we love the most. We get most frustrated all the way around, right?
Yeah.
The big emotions of frustration, alarm, and intensified pursuit. These are the big ones. They're evoked, whenever we face separation of any kind. And in this pandemic, we're facing separation all over the place. Everything from being reminded of our mortality to not being able to be with our loved ones and to so on. So oh my goodness, and all the routines change and so on. So it's important that we get frustrated with the people that we love the most, and it's important to know that when they're underfoot and when they don't get enough distance from us, that frustration mounts. So what to do with the big emotions? In one way, the answer is the same for us and for them, for our children and them. Emotional playgrounds were always meant to be the kind of emotional outhouse of civilization, so to speak, and we need it more than ever. We need music, we need painting, we need stories, we need places to scream, we need places to be mad, we need drama, we need theater, we need to act things out, we need to act out big emotions, we need to play dead. We need to do all of those kinds of things that are there, and just this is bottom line stuff. Is there's way too many emotions for reality, so we've got to find a place for it and bring back the emotional playgrounds, and that's for all of us, all the way around. And so a little bit of patience until we find, what works for children, but. Deborah, you have lots to say about this. I think you just did a webinar on this, so you've got lots
Well,
to say on it.
yeah, I was just thinking about my conversations with parents of late, and the biggest emotion, besides frustration, which I know we'll get into tonight, is just the amount of guilt that I hear parents talk about. And when I think about guilt, and I'm trying to put my head around where's this guilt, this sense of guilt coming from? The sense that we're not doing schooling well, that our children, are we showing up enough for them? What about, we have all this time together. Are we making good use of it? Are our children thriving? Are we taking care of all their needs? And so I hear from a lot of parents this sense of guilt that how am I supposed to do it all? I'm not doing it well. I have this opportunity to spend time with them, but I'm not spending time with them. And then when I think about guilt, what is underneath that is just sadness and frustration. And I just think that under these layers of frustration and guilt is so much sadness that I even find a hard time putting my words to it. I can talk about sadness intellectually, but man, oh man, sometimes something will just break open. This morning it was something my daughter had shown me on Instagram, that some kids were bullying each other, and I could feel the sadness come up inside of me and surprise me. It's like I know intellectually they're there, but it's like, surprise, we're just going to make an appearance now. And you feel these emotional waves that can kind of pull you under, threaten to take you down. And I think they're alarming with their intensity, but I think we need to normalize that this is an emotional experience. This is an emotional journey. This is what resilience looks like, is to have our feelings come back, and that we've got to be patient with ourselves, and we have to be patient, and to realize that we aren't going to be feeling like we're our best version of ourselves as parents during this. I don't know how you could. It's just far too much. It's too overwhelming, and things are changing too fast for one to feel any kind of solid feet, foundation underneath your feet. So I'm full of emotion. I can't always name all of them, but I know they're there.
The
Yeah.
sadness is huge. The sadness is the grounding emotion, and sadness. It's very difficult to put words to the sadness here. It's very difficult to articulate it because it's so systemic. It goes so deep. It's so existential. But if there was ever a time for sad stories and sad music, for giving an avenue for this, it is now. Yes, in times of distress, we want a lot of distraction, and understandably so. We want to be entertained, but we must make room for the sadness in us. It's too early for straight to straight talks because it takes a long time for this to catch up with us. It takes a long time for us to really get a sense of what it is that we're going to miss and so on. And we have so many problems to solve right now that we can't quite feel what we need to. That is why emotional playgrounds, that actually, if we give them a little bit of room, they will find the sadness in us, and the children will as well. If you give them a bit of room, if you give them, you know, whatever their emotional playground is, with the crayons, with the drawing, with the stories, you will find the play hunting for the sadness that we need to kind of ground us.
Yeah, I want to just add in here, because part of the question, well, this is a related question, was what are some ways we can open up the discussion if we can sense they're anxious, but it's coming out as irritation and anger. And I think I was thinking along the same lines there, that it's so hard to discuss directly. It's so hard to have the words. I find even
Yeah.
for myself,
It's too
I don't
close.
have the words yet. And it's this indirect, I see in the chat coming up right now, things about doing things indirectly. We can't, it's one step removed. We can't go
Yes.
at it directly. And that's why the movies, the stories, the drama, the songs, oh my goodness, how they just surprise us with, all of a sudden I'll be listening and I'll just be in tears, and oh, where did that come from?
It
And
blindsides you, right?
it does, it
But
does.
that's why we need it, as you say, one step removed where it doesn't account. It
Yeah.
is playful. It is in an emotional playground. One step removed. That's what's necessary, because it's too close.
It's too
just
close.
too close. And having heart to hearts. Well, you know, if the child is ready for that, if you can, but
They might be. They might be.
Yeah, they may be, but you can't push it. You can't
No,
push
and
it
I
at
find
this
that
point.
it's usually after some kind of release. There's been some release valve. There's been some way, or we get at something indirectly, and then sometimes the words are there. Sometimes, you know, one of my daughters has been writing poetry. I think I mentioned that last time, that she's finding her words in this, but it's not. It's not all who are able to do that. I know I'm certainly not able to do that yet, and I do think that I do think that those release valves are the way through, the emotional playgrounds, however you want to call them. Getting at that indirectly is going to be so important right now. Why do you think everyone is going for these things, like, you know, having dance parties and spontaneous dance parties I've been hearing, and going for you know, jogging? One of my daughters took up jogging, never thought she would ever do that. You know, people are looking for these outlets. They're looking for ways to sing together, trying to figure out how to do this, baking, all kinds of different creative outlets. It's because we need these outlets right now. We need this now more than ever. We need these daily. We need these in our lives. But right now, more than ever, we need them. This is not the time to try to get down to business and accomplish things, or get, you know, our academics, you know, get something accomplished that way. That will come back. That will come back. Right now, we got to find out ways to get some of this emotion moving, so it doesn't get stuck.
One of the things that I'm thinking of as I listen to you both talk is, you know, when it works best, we have our emotional playgrounds. When it isn't working, I think it's our siblings and that are cracking open the emotion, because I'm hearing a lot more about sibling conflict and frustration in the home between kids. And I'm thinking that some of this frustration is how, I mean, the best irritant is a sibling. Often, you know, the best, you know, the person who is usually in your face, or, you know, taking your toys, or disagreeing with what you want to play with. It would be a perfect place for that small irritant of a sibling, you know, where there's some frustration, which just opens up the emotion that lies underneath the surface. And so, you know, the attacking, foul frustration, the sibling conflict that occurs, parents who feel overwhelmed by the amount of, you know, frustration that is mounting in the home, trying to find a way to get around and through these emotions, knowing that, you know, it's what's needed is expression, but being caught off guard, I think, by the intensity of the frustration where kids are erupting on each other. And spouses, like, I mean, talk about marriages having being under duress in terms of, you know, being irritating, you know, for each other, and the small things that just crack open the frustration. And out of the blue, we're like, why am I talking like this? Where is this all coming from? And that's what happens when we don't have emotional playgrounds, or when our emotions are too big and they overwhelm us. And so I think this is part of the guilt we also feel, is that we're frustrated, and it's it's bleeding out of us in some way, shape, or form, and we feel badly about it, because I don't think we want to live like this. I don't think we want to hurt the people that we are with. We don't want to yell at our kids, and we don't want our kids to yell at each other. But I think we feel, I think your emotions have a way to humble you in so much. They are so humbling to realize that, oh, we think we're so logical and in control, but to be humbled by such powerful emotion that we can only barely sometimes catch a glimpse of or find words for. So this is, to me, the other side of not having an emotional playground. It bursts out of you.
Yeah. And that's one of that's actually our a good segue to our next group of questions, is all around siblings and interactions around siblings, because now, you know, everybody's finding themselves home together, and even interestingly enough, even people, I've got one question coming from home learners who were home together already, but now they don't have the regular outlets of going to for their activities or going out for exploring, and so they're all together. And so even this, just being on top of each other and having all this big emotion and having nowhere else to go, it's going to come out. And I think what strikes me the most, just following the conversation we just had about the release and what you were just talking about, Deborah, is the importance of building in some kind of routines, some kind of ways of providing this release, so it's before it comes out at each other. I think that's the only way to be able, it's there. We can't just put a lid on it. It's not going to work. And I some, you know, some of the questions coming through, I've tried everything. And they're just, you know, they're at each other. And so finding these ways, trying to build in some structures, some structured time outside, physical activity as much as you can, something, or inside, running around the house, doing a dance, you know, dance competition, something to get some of that out so it's not leaking out everywhere. So that volcano isn't just erupting in all the wrong places.
Yeah. Structures are just key. Underscore, underline, exclamation mark. They are so key. In difficult times, we need routines, we need structures. And so when you, because if you play it by ear, and when we're living on top of each other, you'll get exhausted very, very quickly, and you won't be able to keep on top of it. And part of the structures are to divide the kids from each other. But part of the structure is that there is some solitude time, some alone time, some things in which they are reading their own stories or drawing or doing whatever their age is appropriate and so on, or making music. But some of this is they shouldn't be in each other's spaces all the time. But it requires a structure. And so it's a whole different way of parenting. If you're used to freewheeling it, if you're used to, you know, basically giving demands, being quite responsive to your situation, and, you know, maybe you're quite competent at it and you're really good at it. Well, this goes beyond what most people can do. And so it's why it is that, you know, if there's still any energy before you go to bed at night, you know, you try to think, okay, I'm going to put in one structure in place tomorrow, and I'm going to do this, and gradually build up a way of doing family that is structure based and not order based, not freewheeling it, but you take it one at a time. What is needed here? What is required? But as I said, you know, in all my years of parent consulting, so much of it around the sibling conflict is you remember, you know, two things: is they need to orbit around you, not each other, because that's, for most of them, is going to get out of control. As soon as they matter too much, they hurt each other too much, and that goes out of control. So divide and conquer is really important, is to keep them orbiting. And the second thing is don't just leave them babysit each other. Don't just leave it freewheeling. Don't just leave it by default, unless your kids, and there are some kids and siblings that work it out themselves and that really do a good job and find a way of respecting each other, and it's marvelous to see. But sometimes those people tell you, just let them work it out themselves. And no, they're very fortunate that happened. You can't take that for granted. You can't take it for granted. Sometimes it happens, but sometimes you've got to provide structure. And most of the time you do. And as we get on top of each other, and all the research shows for all mammals, the closer we live in a proximity with each other, other than when we're forced into that, but the more stressful it is. And but it is structure that is key to being able to walk through each day. But it takes a while to build up. It won't come right away. It takes a while. And, you just add a component, slowly as you can, and gradually you begin to see, oh, this is a bit easier. The structure does the job rather than me trying to keep control of everything.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is especially a concern. I know there's some questions coming in about what if you're on your own? What if you don't have extra help? So you're on your own with all of your children, and you don't have that. And I think that's where the structure can really help. It's like that's almost like your extra support, so to speak, because there is safety in that. There's something that both for the parent and the child, and we're making up structures as we go, because all our routines are just pulled out of whack. But we can create those. And like you say, it's that intentionality. It's that little by little, it's trying to sort of put something that you can count on, right? It's just something.
And that's what effective teachers will be doing with 30 children. So it's possible to do, but it's a whole new way of thinking. You have to think, I can't do this, playing it by ear. I've got to do it a different way. And structures are less sensitive to the needs of each individual. That's true. And that's a compromise you take. It's less sensitive to what is needed at the moment. However, it enables that you could still be the parent at the end of the day, and the kids haven't killed each other, and that's all important. And I mean, one more thing with this is, it's really important to have a bit of grace towards yourself as well as your loved ones and each other. This is not easy. And for some, for some families, they're in heaven right now. The kids are in heaven because they're close to mom and dad. They've always wanted to be this, and it's just really tickety-boo. It really, really works. And for others, it's not quite like that. They're getting, a sense of something quite different. But it's at the end of the day, when we're in unfamiliar territory, when it's a time of stress, it's important to jettison the idea of making headway. That you're not trying to make headway. You're not trying to get someplace. You're not trying to teach a lesson. It's just harm reduction. Like don't mess up the relationship. It's just keep it simple. Keep it simple. The relationship is forever. That's what you're going to take through it. That's what will endure. And, back up into relationship. That's the bottom line. And so it means jettisoning a lot of things. It means letting a lot of things go. It's just like when a boat in stormy weather, everything is thrown overboard except, the only thing you preserve is the relationship of the boat to the water. You want the boat on top of the water, not underneath. And and this is a time when we don't need to feel badly about that. That's just what it is.
Yeah. I was just going to emphasize one of the things that you'd said, Tamara, about that as well, which was the alarm, how it helps with alarm. The structure routine gets us out of the frustration and the kids taking over and having their own, being without direction. But I think about the young child who will ask you the question over and over again: what's the plan for the day? What are we doing? What's the plan for the day? And you'll kind of see, like a woodpecker does, they're just at you. What's the plan for the day? What's the plan for the day? And this is an orienting response. And as soon as you get ahead and you take the lead and you provide some structure, you provide some routine, it not only does it put you in that alpha position, but you'll see the anxiety in your child start to come down, because you've now appeared as the leader. I've got the plan. What are we going to, well, it's a surprise. You don't actually have to know what the plan is.
Yes, right.
You know,
A
I'll
little
get
bit of
back to
bluff
you.
goes a long
Yeah, a
way.
little bit of bluff, you know, it'll be on the magic board in the morning. You know, you have a chalkboard now. And, you know, this is what preschool teachers, preschool teachers know what teachers do. When I was a teacher, I would always orient to the board. This is the plan for the day. And, you know, you lead through it, and you can sell just about anything with attachment. But what it does for their emotional system, to see you take the lead, to get ahead of it. If your child has got those orienting responses, what's the plan? Who's going to be there? What are we going to do? And you've got this feeling like you got a woodpecker at you. This is your child trying to make you wake up and to take the lead and to provide structure, routine, and to orient them to the shape of the day, because they've lost the shape of the day. They've lost whoever was taking care of them. They've lost the routine and structure. You're not fighting them to get out of the door in the morning. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do with them all day now. So everything's upside down, and they're trying to figure out where their north pole is, their north star, whatever you want to say. And so we've got to figure out how to do that in our homes.
Yeah, we have a whiteboard, not a chalkboard, but a whiteboard on the fridge. And this is for my 18 and 21-year-old. And it's up for me just as much as them. And it says T at, and then I rewrite in the time.
Yeah,
and that's what we always do with the check in at the end of the night. T at, it's usually about 7:30 in the morning, but sometimes it will vary depending on how late we're up. And it's just something to look forward to. It's something to orient to. From there, we make the plan. But at least we know there's tea at 7:30 and we can go from there. Well, and I think that just says so much too about the importance of that relationship. And I just wanted to segue. There was a couple questions around adolescence and a few questions, but I was just reading, I got a little sneak peek at a new editorial that's coming out by Darlene Denise Frisk that she actually wrote with her adolescent, and it's called A Relationship Room and Rest. But there was one line that just stood out to me that I wanted to bring in here, because it reminded me what you were saying, Gordon. She said, we can allow ourselves to keep the relationship foremost in mind and be creative about the rest.
Yes. Yes. Or not creative.
Up so much.
Or not creative. I mean, the other way too.
Wing it.
Just keep the relationship in mind, and then, you know, let it go. At the end of the day, you know, you're going to bridge it. You're going to say, I lost my temper. I didn't want to do that. Et cetera, et cetera. That was my problem, not your problem, you know, et cetera. We're okay. I'm still your mom. I'm still your dad. I'm looking forward to dinner with you. It's just a time. It's not that we have to do things perfectly. We won't do things perfectly. We won't be able to. But the fact is the relationship is the bottom line. So there's a lot of times to mention that. And that's what the idea is when you blow it, when you've raised your voice, when you see you've wounded a child, it's going back to, we're okay. I'm still your mom. I'm still your dad. I'm looking forward to the bridging response, which goes right over the problem and puts the eyes on the connection on what stays the same. And this is how we do it. So we do have a repair kit, and it's important to use that repair kit, you know.
It's getting a lot of work, Gordon.
Yes, it really is. It's because you can't see it. This stuff blindsides you. You don't even know that you're emotionally loaded until you trip over something that you thought you were, you know, you had this, and you trip over it. And oh my goodness, I've been doing this over and over again. I'm thinking, okay, this is not who I bite the person's head off. This is not be good. And then I open my mouth and you know, but when it's family, we do have repair kits, and that's important to use them.
Mm-hmm. Well, to our questions then, this is a question, struggling with, they have 3 children, and the oldest is almost 16. And I think this parallels quite a few people are probably having the same issue, but spending a lot of time alone in her room, isolated in her room, and really trying to figure out how to do this, because there's this combination. A lot of that is online time where they're trying to do their schooling, but there's a lot of going to distraction, using those same devices for escape, which I think is happening a lot, but even more so now that there's more of this tendency to escape. And so just some concern around this and trying to figure out, how do we bring her out of this space? How do we, we're trying to draw her in and engage her, and yeah, so that struggle, I'll just end with this sentence. So we see this pandemic as an opportunity to strengthen our attachment with our children, but feel a bit lost as to how to do this when our preference is isolation and screens at the moment. And I think that's something a lot of people are struggling with right now.
Well, I'm going to go back to what Tamara was focusing on, was the structure or ritual. When the time is good, see if you can get an agreement at a very simple thing, like 8 o'clock, we're going to do the jigsaw puzzle together for a bit, or at 10 o'clock or so, and then see if you can get this and build in a ritual to this and work at this slowly, so that, because otherwise when she buries herself into the room and you don't have the next bridge, you don't have the next connection time, you start getting alarmed, you start feeling, and then it's pulling, and she goes into escape mode and buries herself into her computer. So I would take it slowly, but remember to do this when your relationship is good, when you do have a little bit of power, when you can feel that connection, and then bring on side with a next connection time that you can look forward to. Or I've made a snack for you. I know it's your favorite. I will give you. I'll have it ready for you at such and such a time, whatever it is. But that I think is how you get the thin edge of the wedge in. You get a connection time from which you can have a bit of interaction, where you can collect, you can nurture a little bit, you can feed her in terms of her attachment needs, and just like to let her know that you're her answer, but do it in a very indirect way. So you play it slow, and that's one thought.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how easy it is as a parent sometimes to get, I don't know, maybe baited isn't the right word, but to get so hooked onto the device is the problem. It's basically a symptom. It's part of the behavior. And if we get locked onto all these devices, and why do we have them? And if we could only get rid of the devices, everything would be fine. And my answer to that is no. There might be something else that would replace the need to escape or to disappear. And so I think it's important as a parent not to lose sight of that it's always keeping our eyes on the relationship, looking for signs of receptivity. Where do we see a doorway, a window where we can get our foot in there? For me, it was peppermint tea and carrot muffins and just the scent of food, or bringing a cup of tea with no expectations, and just looking for those small signs of receptivity, and to stay focused on relationship. Because as a parent, when you're trying to do togetherness and your child isn't receptive, you feel alarmed, you feel sad, you feel frustrated. And so what's the way through is to feel some agency around what it is that you can do, where you see some receptivity, and to focus, on those little glimmers of hope. Okay, they took the tea, they took the muffin, I got a hello, rather than seeing the screens as your enemy. It's not. That's a wasted energy. Keep your eye looking for receptivity, and you'll feel much more effective there, and you'll see signs of connection, which will give you hope that this is indeed the direction you want to continue.
Yeah.
I like what you said there, Deborah. And I think too, part of the question, the background of the question is they were also seeing creative things come out of her. There were times, and I think to recognize that and appreciate that. It is so normal right now. Especially it's normal for all of us, I think, as adults, to want some distraction, to want something where they're just not thinking about it anymore. It's overwhelming. Adolescence can be a bit overwhelming itself without all of this going on and all of the changes. And so I that drawing out feels so important, that finding those moments to draw out, to add in, not trying to cut things out as much. That's harder to do, but to actually draw them out of that place, which I hear in this question, I hear that the parents are yearning for, and that's what they're aiming for. And so I would encourage you in that direction.
And that's where to remember that that play's middle name is engaging. That's what play is all about. So if you can get the child's number in terms of a playful activity that engages them, for every child it's different, and you can somehow convert that into a little project you do together, create a radio show together, edit a little, a yearbook together, do something like, depending on what their gifts are, depending on what their talents are, but to be able to do something that is so engaging. It's just like, yes, they should be attached to us and engage in attachment. That is true. That's need. But sometimes play, we need to be able to harness the absolute power of play to engage, but we've got to match it to what would really engage the child and make sure that we're on the other end of it in some way, so that we can capitalize on it, we can harness that. But again, a family project, a jigsaw puzzle, a creative craft, something that you build a structure around, in which there are a lot of smiles and nods and a lot of opportunities to really, really collect them in this context. It can go a long way. It may be a game of cards. It may be, bringing out the board games. There are so many things that we can rediscover the way families used to do this when they had nothing else, and they had 14 kids and they were only in one room houses and so on. Like, people have done this. They have done this, but they made music together. They made this together. They did, there are ways, and this gives us an opportunity to go back to square one. Okay, how would we do this? How can we find it? But every play will engage any child. We just have to find out how. And there'll be more things that usually will not work than will. So we have to be willing to walk the maze on it, to try something else, the next day or the next day, until we find it. There's no silver bullet here. There's nobody can tell you just what will work with any particular child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just going to say, there's someone who had a question about a child who it would seem that might have been quite stuck before the pandemic hit, and so having a hard time to engage them, and in relationship before, and so this added stress and pressure after it, has exacerbated things. And I come back to what you're saying again, Gordon, is that play is the invitation in a very camouflaged kind of way to attachment. It's a safe doorway. Yes. Where there's no hooks or expectations for anything to be real or lasting or vulnerable. So that little play that you can try, the little teasing, the little getting into your face in a friendly way. Food is also a wonderful, safe way this way, if they will take your food, if they'll be receptive to any of it, even if you just invite them with your scents or things, the favorite foods that you have. So it's that sense of constantly yearning for invitation, for relationship with your child. And I think about, so much of what we talk about is that when we are stuck and where so many things are not working, the one last thing that works, that is our last great hope, is relationship, and finding a way in, if it's play, if it's feeding, if it's just bridging the distance, that we must not give up or give up hope that this relationship is going to find a way through. I have worked with families where it has seemed like a miracle has happened, where a child is turned around through relationship. And you are, if you'd only have to see that once or twice to be convinced of the sheer power and magnitude of our desire and contact and closeness in our life. It is a hunger that never leaves us. And so if we can push into this, even if we're not getting the receptivity on the other end, even if your child seems stuck, I can guarantee you with every ounce in me that I know, we all know that it's relationship that can move mountains.
And sometimes play brings you into that, or give you the context of playful baking, playful, cooking, playful music, playful. There are so many things, and it just, that's the kind of thing. It's play together. Find a way of doing this. There will be something that something will get through, something will engage, and it's finding that which would engage. And if that's where you can collect your child again.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me, just to bring in this in the context of just one more question here, that had to do both with siblings and that stuckness piece. It was two sisters, and I'm sure this is also something that many have experienced, where the older sibling, about 16 in this case, um, is not wanting to, or pushing away the younger sibling, and a lot of hurt feelings around that. And so just questions of how to handle that as a parent, how to soften the heart of that of your child towards the sibling, how to protect the younger sibling from the wounding. And again, it comes back to what you were just talking about, the relationship. The parent can take that initiative to try to find these ways to soften. It's easier to bring them back to you and try to bring that to that connection with you will then translate into when that softening can happen. Then there could be that an opening for that relationship with the other sibling. But in the meantime, you being in that place where you're both protecting and shielding the younger child, and also trying to find a way through creatively, through play, something that there can be a connection on to help bring that softening. This is so
And
hard when they're coming into it, Stuck.
the shielding that Tamara is talking about, just to clarify, is the shielding that is empowered by the child's attachment to you.
Yeah.
It's so important not to follow down the rabbit hole of the interaction between children. Come on, girls, get along, be nice, don't be so mean, don't talk that way to your sister, and so on and so on. And it can just become this natter that is all day long, and it's not going anywhere. And if a child is being shamed, put down, discounted, and otherwise hurt by a sibling, it is so important that the parent makes an extra effort to draw that child into orbit around them, or a grandma, or another adult, because the more important the sibling is, the more they get hurt to the quick. So the first job, even before you try to figure out, how can I soften the heart of the other one? How can I matchmake? How can I help that person see how they could make a contribution? Because a lot of it is matchmaking between siblings, is presenting them as the answer to the other. The kids can't resist it. And when you stop harping on them and say, oh my goodness, your sister appreciated you doing this, when you actually matchmake, there's an incredible way of doing this, which means one is the answer to the other. But the very first job is to make sure that your child is shielded, because if they're orbiting around their sibling, and a sibling has not invited them to exist in their presence and is full of wounding interaction, that child is getting hurt. And so it's important to be able to create that shield. And again, as Tamara was talking about, that shield is from the child's own attachment to mom, dad, grandma. The more that matters, the less weight is put on the sibling relationship. And that's the way it should be with all siblings. They should be like planets orbiting around the sun, not around each other. And so we've got to do what we can do to bring them back into orbit around those who are meant to take care of them.
Yeah, I just want to bring in one last thing as we are close to our close here, and I wanted to say just a few things at the end. But one was just around a confusion of roles. I'm just going to read this part in. Having my daughter at home and going through online schooling daily made me realize how uninterested she is in learning if there is no relational piece. She has no motivation. The day goes way better if we cook, play cards, and talk. She gets confused if all of a sudden I become the teacher.
Yes.
What would be the right condition to help her find some interest in learning online? Or is it a response to the lack of attachment she finds in school?
Well, you got something beautiful working there. You got a dance that really works. I would just say dance.
Go
Feel
for
a bit
it.
guilty about what you're not doing, but take up a relationship with your guilt and say you can't do it all. Just go with what you've got there, and don't try to do everything. What you described was beautiful. It's music to my ears. Go with it. And again, you're going to feel guilty for not doing the other thing. It's okay. We're going to feel guilty about something. We always will. So a little bit of guilt won't be that difficult. You can live with it. In the meantime, enjoy your relationship with your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there were a few more questions out there. I think we got to quite a few, so we'll carry some of those over. And I'm so thankful to our faculty who have been, I could see the chat has been moving and addressing some questions there too. We will be doing this next week. So watch for registration. We'll open up tomorrow. We'll be posting the recording on the website in the place that I mentioned. There's a special tab on the navigation bar of our website that says resources related to the pandemic, or some words to that effect. And you'll find the recordings there and some editorials there. The editorial I was giving you a little sneak peek of, well, will be in the newsletter coming up, in our next newsletter in a week or so. And you can watch for that. And also, I wanted to point, but there was a lot of talk about play today. We talked a lot about, and we talked about sadness as well, and the important role of sadness. And we have 2 courses coming up that if you are interested in that area, you might want to explore further. One is the course Play 101, which is a course that Gordon created a few years ago. Jewel Epp is one of our wonderful faculty from Berlin who's going to be facilitating that. She's involved with working with autism and play, and has just some wonderful thoughts just about play in general, and about using play to release a lot of this big emotion that's in us. So it's a great course to take advantage of. Coming up soon, and resilience as well. I think Genevieve might be putting the links there if you're interested in finding out more information. Also another course, resilience. Heather Ferguson, she's here with us in the background here. She's going to be facilitating this course on resilience. Such a great course for how do we bounce back from times like this that we're faced with. How do we find our way through instead of getting stuck in it? And again, a wonderful resource. So there are many other resources and courses available too. Go and check the website. If you have questions still remaining, you can send them to us. Just follow the information on our website. And thank you for joining us tonight. And appreciate your questions and and the fact that you're here and taking the time to be with us. And I wish you all the best with the children in your care and all of your challenging situations that you're in right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, take good care.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Good morning.
Good night.